Passing your instrument check ride is one thing, but passing your CFII check ride is a whole nother ballgame. In today's video, we're going to be talking about my CFII check ride, kind of how it went for me, everything you might be able to expect on yours based off of my experience, and then I'll also try to give any tips for you guys who potentially have one coming up in the future. So be sure to watch the end because I've got a couple tips for you guys. Now, for those of you who are new here, my name is Luke. Thank you for watching this video. My channel is kind of all about documenting my journey going from zero experience all the way to airline pilot, as well as just vlogs of my life. So if that's of any interest to you, I would definitely appreciate a subscribe, leave a comment, tell me what kinds of videos would be beneficial to you guys. Now, on that journey towards becoming an airline pilot, one of the pilot ratings that you can earn is CFII, and what that stands for is Certified Flight Instructor Instrument. If you're not familiar with aviation yet, that's okay. Most pilots will get what's called an instrument rating. At least if you're going to become an airline pilot, you need one. An instrument rating allows you to fly in clouds. So you can fly when there's clouds, poor visibility, etc. Private pilots without this instrument rating can't do that. Now, this certificate I just earned, Certified Flight Instructor Instrument, CFII, that's what allows me to now help pilots get an instrument rating. So if you wanted to train with me, email me if you actually want to. I'm based in Utah and offer pretty good rates. But anyway, if you wanted to get your instrument rating, I could help you do that. So I could help you get your private pilot license, your instrument rating, commercial pilot certificate, etc. So getting the CFII was definitely a big check ride for me, and it was my second to last check ride. I actually took my MEI, multi-engine instructor check ride, right after the II check ride on the same day and finished. So the program is done, but more about that later. So we'll kind of get into it now. I'll talk about my oral portion of the check ride, and then I'll talk about the flight portion, and then maybe any tips I would have for you guys if you have a II check ride coming up or an instrument check ride. And before we move on, you guys, I just wanted to say a big thanks to Airplace USA for sponsoring this video. If you haven't heard of them, they offer monthly headset rentals for new student pilots or for those who don't want to drop $1,300 to upgrade their headset. So they have two different options. You can rent to own, where you rent a headset for a certain amount of months until you eventually own it and you just pay monthly. Or you can rent and return. So you can just pay a monthly fee to rent a headset, and then eventually when you don't want it anymore, you can just return it, cancel it. It's free. There's no sort of cancellation fee or sign up minimum. The cool part is they've given me a discount code, so you can go in and put Luke10 when you go and you check out, and you'll get 10% off on the rent and return section. So definitely be sure to check them out. They have all sorts of headsets, and let's get back to the video. All right, so as far as the check ride itself, I was with an examiner that was from Indiana. He was actually an import, so he wasn't local to my area here in Utah. I got endorsed on December 11th, and then I took my check ride on December 16th. So I didn't fly for about 4 or 5 days. I definitely wanted more time to study. I'm at ATP, which if any of you are familiar at all with ATP, it's very fast paced. So I was endorsed. I felt like I was ready, but you know, you're never ready enough. And I definitely wish I had more time to study, but at the same time, it was enough to pass a check ride, and I would feel comfortable going and trying to teach someone how to learn instrument flying. I'm sure there's a lot of things I can learn. But anyway, so we started out with oral, and it was pretty simple. The way this examiner liked running things is he would sit there and he told me to teach him about 3 things. He said, I want you to teach me how to fly instrument, so very broad. And then he said, I want you to teach me everything there is to know about approach plates, and I want you to teach me everything there is to know about en route charts. And then he just kind of sat there, and I was like, okay, do you have any specific questions or anything you want me to start with? And he was just like, nope, go ahead. So, you know, I just kind of started rambling and started saying a bunch of stuff, and I kind of prefaced everything, and I said, hey, look, if I was realistically teaching a student, I would send them lots of resources to use, and then I would kind of more answer questions they have and teach things at a much slower pace. And I clarified and I said, do you want me to kind of just give you all the information there is to know about approach chart? Do you want me to give you all the information about an en route chart all at once? And he kind of just wanted all the information I had. So that was a little stressful. I preferred the check rides where they just kind of interview me. They ask a question, I give them the bare minimum needed to answer the question, and we move on. But this was kind of, you know, it's a lot easier to expose gaps in your knowledge when you're teaching. But that's what this check ride is all about, teaching. So as far as that first question in the oral that he said, teach me about how you're gonna teach a student to do instrument flying. I kind of started rambling and it wasn't exactly what he wanted. So he said, okay, what are the 3 basic skills an instrument student needs to learn? And I kind of just started, I didn't know if there was a 3 written down somewhere very clear. And it's not super clear, but I'll explain it in a minute. And I kind of, I said, okay, well, they need to have an instrument cross-check. And then here's all the errors that, are prone to doing an instrument cross-check. And then they need to, I kind of just started, honestly, just spewing information that was good information, but not necessarily the 3 fundamental skills. And so basically, these are the 3 fundamental skills. And this is all in the Instrument Flying Handbook. It's an FA resource. You can go get the PDF online. In Chapter 6, Section 1, Airplane Attitude Instrument Flying. So basically, these are the 3 primary skills that he wanted me to hit on. The first one is aircraft control. The second one is instrument cross-check. And then the third one is instrument interpretation. So he wanted me to talk about those 3 fundamental skills that students need to learn. And what's kind of confusing is they're not listed out like, hey, these are the 3 fundamental skills. It's not listed nice like that in the Instrument Flying Handbook. But as far as aircraft control, there's 2 ways to control the airplane. And I did know this. The 2 ways are control and performance and primary and supporting. And anyway, basically what he was saying is use them both together, which you do. I'm not going to explain what they are. You can go read about it. But anyway, he wanted me to talk about those 3 things. So aircraft control, instrument cross-check, and instrument interpretation. Once we got through that, I kind of had an idea. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't totally what he wanted, but he said I knew pretty much, I don't know, what you need to know for now, but he wanted me to study that. So that was a good area to improve. And then the second thing we went into en route charts or approach plates. I can't remember the order we did. And I pretty much just explained all the stuff that you're gonna find on an en route chart. A good resource for this to use to study is Fly 8 Mike Alpha's videos. He does the en route charts explained, and he does an advanced one too. And that pretty much covers literally everything on those en route charts. The approach plate was pretty simple. I went through everything. There were a couple things maybe that I pretty much knew everything on it except for maybe 1 or 2 things. A question that he asked that I know this examiner liked to ask people is, where does the touchdown zone elevation number come from? And if I'm not mistaken, it comes from the highest point within the first 3,000 feet of the runway. I believe that's the answer. And then airport elevation, where does that number come from? And I believe it's the highest point on any of the active runways. So kind of just random questions like that. But again, if you're becoming a CFII, those are the types of questions that you need to know. It's one thing to fly an approach, but it's one thing to know, hey, where are they getting this number? Why did they get that number? Why do they pick to use that for that number? And kind of things like that. So anyway, that's all for the oral. It was pretty good. I want to say it lasted about 2 to 3 hours, so not super terrible. So now we'll kind of talk about the flight and how it went. I can't remember everything about it, but I'll try to give you some of the things that I do remember, which is probably the most important stuff. I know we went out and we did a couple different approaches. We did a hold, and he did an equipment failure on one of those. In the Seminole that I'm flying, the Piper Seminole multi-engine plane, and it has a 6-pack, but it has a G5 for the attitude indicator, and then it has a G5 for the HSI, and then it has a standby HSI as well. But that's what we were using, and he covered up both G5s on one of the approaches. I can't remember if it was the ILS or RNAV or whatnot. But yeah, we did a VOR approach, we did the ILS, and then we did the RNAV. It was the most stressful check ride I've ever had for a couple reasons. It was getting dark. This examiner isn't from the area, so he doesn't know at all the visual, landmarks when air traffic control is saying, hey, over by Promontory Point, there's 2 fighter jets coming over because we border next to Hill airspace. And I'll put up on the screen somewhere just showing you the airspace. It's not insane. I know there's worse, but it's still pretty busy because some of the areas of the approaches are under the Bravo, I believe, or right next to it. And then our airspace, our Class Delta where I train, it borders Hill Air Force's airspace in Ogden, Utah. And it cuts off the Delta, so we kind of have to fly a weird pattern. Anyway, all that combined with an examiner who's not familiar with the area, and at the time it was very busy. It was just an evening. There were tons of aircraft out training, flying, tons wanting to do the approaches, and this examiner was trying to go quick. But anyway, it was very good. He just vectored me right on to final approach course, and I usually didn't have time to brief the full approach. I tried to do my best, so I was a little stressed. And then I believe one of them, he failed my engine, so that was stressful, but I had done my multi-check ride already, so it wasn't too bad, my COM multi, not MEI. Now, one of the things I did during this check ride, which I I mean, it depends on your examiner, but we had done 2 approaches. I was very flustered. Our tower, sometimes some of the controllers are pretty cranky, and you know, they're just unreasonably cranky in my opinion sometimes. And there was just a lot going on with our missed instructions, and then I was confused. You know, there's just a lot going on when you're under the hood too. And yet I'm still the one that's taking comms saying, okay, we're looking for the traffic. And even though the examiner was looking for the traffic. Anyway, you can see why it would be complicated. But so after we did 2 approaches and we just went missed on each one, I said, hey, is it all right if we go out to an initial approach fix, or I don't want to get vectored right on final because I need to breathe right now. Like in real life, it would not come up this quick. And in real life, I would have time to brief and take my time. So, you know, you want to train under stress, but I'm like, can we go out there and do that? And I think he actually really liked that and appreciated that. He told me one of the biggest things he was looking for on this check ride, obviously you need to do everything within standards and whatnot, but he said, I want to see PIC mentality, that you can be the pilot in command and that you're going to be safe. That's the biggest thing he was signing off for, which makes sense. I mean, as an examiner, you just want to make sure somebody's going to be safe as the instructor, not necessarily that, you know, they want to be in standards, but that's not the pinnacle of the check ride. So hopefully that makes sense. We went out to the initial approach fix, we took our time, and then yeah, it was pretty good. Everything was within standards. Now, one thing that was kind of interesting on this check ride, and if you're like instrument flying or you have your instrument rating, this will make sense. If you're not, it probably won't make sense. Was on the VOR Alpha into Ogden, and you can pull up this approach if you want, Ogden, Utah, Kilo, Oscar, Golf, Delta. And after crossing over the VOR, you cross over at 5,700, and then you can start your descent down to your circling minimums. And when I crossed over the VOR, the green needle hadn't come alive yet, and I started descending. And I thought as soon as you know, your GPS was showing me, showing the DME, and I thought as soon as you cross over the VOR, that's when you can start your descent. But technically you're not allowed to. You have to wait till you have positive course guidance, so that as soon as that green needle goes off the wall, then you can start your descent, even though you've already been beyond the VOR. Hopefully that makes sense, but just something that I learned. And the FAA gives you a couple 100 feet of buffer when you're doing these approaches anyway in real life with obstacle clearance, so it wasn't the end of the world. It was just something to touch on. All right, now as far as any tips I have for you guys, I have a few, and I mean, take them with a grain of salt. I'm not very experienced or anything yet, so you know, this is just my 2 cents, and that goes for everything I put on here. You guys can put whatever you want in the comments. I'm trying to do these to share my journey and help us all become better pilots. I am by no means a perfect pilot. I know we all think we're the best, but anyway. So basically, kind of something I would say is when you're studying, don't just study to study when you're trying to get that II rating. I would constantly be asking yourself, why? So if there's a certain rule, why is there this rule? What purpose does that serve? Okay, your instructor taught you to do this, and he said you need to do it at this point. Okay, why? Why do you need to wait till then, or why? So I think just the more you ask yourself why, the better your knowledge will be. I think reading the IFH will help. I mean, that book is super bland, but I think definitely if you're trying to become an instructor, I think chapter 6 is a good one, especially chapter 6, section 1. Those are helpful tools to know. As far as some of the resources that I use that I really appreciated, obviously Flight Insight is really good. He's got plenty of instrument videos, but I would say honestly my #1 vote is for Bold Method. Their live streams are amazing, and if you haven't watched them, you're gonna love them, especially for instrument knowledge. So go to Bold Method on YouTube and look up their live streams. Their videos are fine, but the live streams are really good, and I learn way more on those than I do, you know, watching the average run-of-the-mill YouTube video or just watching a ground school video. So definitely be sure to check those out. Now, the last thing I would say as far as a tip, and this is obviously kind of a given, but is really practice your partial panel approaches. And if you're doing a multi-engine airplane, practice 1 engine out approaches or simulated engine failures. You're gonna have to do these on your check ride. And not only that, but it's really good skills to have. And I didn't train with autopilot. I know a lot of people do. I did some training with it, but most of it was without. I wish I was able to do more, but if you're doing these, I would honestly, you want to be comfortable with it so to know how to use it. as a tool, because it, you know, after you do your training, you want to use autopilot most of the time just because it's safer and reduces workload. But that being said, I think it's really valuable to not use autopilot during training a lot of the time, so you can develop the skills to actually fly. And if you have an engine failure and you're not using autopilot, if you have an engine failure and an equipment failure, if you have an equipment failure, not, you know, I think actually practicing those partial panels and different types of partial panels is going to be really beneficial for your training, not only just for the check ride, but for real life. So, and I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of you guys who have been watching these videos. I appreciate it. So I'm done with school. Let me know what videos you guys would like me to make in the comments. I'm happy to do pretty much anything day in the life, any educational stuff, anything that would really help you guys or be of value. So thank you, safe flying, and we'll see you next time.